Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we are speaking with an athlete who is from Kansas City, Missouri, and living in Sacramento, California now, as she has just graduated with her BA in psychology with plans to become a marriage and family counselor. As she pursues this career, she works as a coach at a couple of gyms and as a posing coach for Bikini and Wellness clients through her business 360 Posing. She first started competing in 2017 in the NANBF, where she won third place in her first show and didn't place, but won Best Poser. And then she went on to compete in her first NPC show in Wellness and Bikini in 2020. She won the overall in Bikini and second in Wellness, and then competed at USA's in both divisions. And then in 2022, she did a warm-up show where she placed second, but decided to pull out of prep. So I'm going to be asking about this journey. And then 2 years later, at this year's LA Fit Expo, she won the overall and then won the second overall at the Arnold Amateur to secure her pro card 6 weeks later. And with her focus being on improvements now, I'm really excited to welcome to the show, Sam McDonough. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm happy you're here. I said your name properly, which gets me excited. So I'm like, okay, we're off to a good start.
Very solid start. My face is cramping because I'm nervous.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, to ease your nerves, you already know the first question, which is, what is something you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage?
Well, ever since I started listening to your podcast, you crossed my mind before my heel hits the stage. Because I'm always like, what if one day Celeste were to ask me what goes through my mind? Yeah. So you, and aside from that, I think about it's a different song depending on what I'm listening to at the moment, but it's always some like queer pop artist. So at the moment it's Girly, and I think about her song Crush Me Up. It's one of her newer songs, and I sing it to myself in my head. And then I also think to what I think before I step on the stage is like, you are Sam McDonough. Not that that means anything, but to me it does. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you are Sam McDonough. You are the only person who can be her. Now go be her and go perform. Like, this is your performance. So turn it on and be yourself. And that's it.
Wow. I really like that. You're the only person who can be her. I think that is a really great statement. What an empowering one too. It's like, it takes you out of competition mindset or comparison mindset, which we are being compared up there. And It puts you into your winning individual mindset.
Yeah. And when you show up, that's when things are fun, because like, for me at least, the anticipation of like what might happen on show day, like, will I get a severe injury on the way to the venue and not be able to step on stage? Like, that's all the stuff I worry about. So once the day is actually there and I'm gonna step on stage and I see all the other competitors, I just like, oh, well, everyone looks exactly how they're gonna look. So this is the fun part. Like, no need to even worry about how other people look, because this is the best you're gonna look. So just go out there.
True that. I'm actually curious about your Instagram bio. When did you start describing yourself that way?
Oh, okay. When I got an Instagram. So,
really?
Like, when I was a kid. Yeah. And then this other athlete, Shay, she commented on one of my pictures recently and mentioned the deep voice. And she was like, and it's from birth, basically insinuating not from steroids.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I was a kid, if I would get on the phone, people would ask, is this a boy?
Yeah.
I've always had a deep voice, so that's where it came from, and I just never changed it.
Because I was like, that's such, like you said, for the bodybuilding community, that can bring up different conversations, but I was curious about that. And it's a deep voiced girly from Missouri, right? Isn't that
Yeah, just a deep voiced girl from Missouri. So it's been that way
Yeah.
since like, I don't know, 2014 when I made an Instagram or whatever.
That's so funny. I love it. Well, I think it's great that you like embraced it versus ran from it. Speaking of individuality. And
Mhm.
you did mention something too, also, I wanted to touch back on, which is being backstage. You see the other women, you know, no one's going to look any different. I think in one of your posts, you had mentioned that in 2020 at USA's, you were already feeling like you shouldn't be there, and then you were looking around, you're I really shouldn't be here. Can you walk
Yeah.
us through like what was going through your head leading into that and even coming out of it? And has your approach or mentality changed or evolved since then?
No, so or okay, yeah. So maybe we'll expand on what you mean by approach mentality in terms of that scenario. But yeah, so what happened is I was prepping, whatever, it was 2020, so prep kept getting like pushed back. It was just a moving target.
Hmm.
And then once the show was getting closer, I was just thinking like, I don't look like these other girls that I'm seeing like on Instagram or like doing well, because I didn't have like that hardness, like I didn't have cap delts. I had some shape to them, but I didn't see, there wasn't a vein in sight. Like I have a
Mm.
picture on my phone because the day before the show I saw a calf vein and I was like, wow, I'm getting so
Made it.
exactly. But I was thinking there should be veins elsewhere too, you know. But yeah, so I just like had a feeling that I wasn't like where I needed to be, but I was kind of being told like, I think you can go pro at this show, blah blah. And I would ask people who I trusted, I'm like, do you think that? Because I don't think that. Like I don't feel like maybe I should be doing this. But I ended up going through with it. And then it was at the resort in Arizona. And
Mhm.
so I went to the resort gym to like do my last session of cardio or whatever. And then I saw the other girls, specifically Samantha Hewell, who's competing this weekend at whichever show, I think Clash. She went pro at 2020 USA's. And I remember seeing her getting on the Stairmaster and she's like, no body fat, like veins everywhere, so lean. And I looked at it and I was like, this is what people are looking like. I'm definitely getting last place. So that was fine. I was just because at that point I was like, okay, my suspicions are confirmed, and like that's fine. So at this point, just like have fun with my mom who flew to Arizona, my friend who came with me, and the teammates that I have with me here. So it was pretty easy for me to change my tune on it. It like wasn't an issue. And then when I saw the other girls like going pro, um, I was like tearing up watching them go pro because it was so cool to
I
see like
agree.
yeah, seeing their goals realized. Like I remember because Amy Delgado went pro, like she won the
Yep.
overall at that show. And in between prejudging and finals, I saw her and her former coach like crying backstage because she was splitting in the middle. So I would say it was more inspiring than anything else.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely. I remember watching it after my class was done, and I was like, this is so awesome. You see how happy everybody is. It's very inspiring. And like you, I shouldn't have been on stage that day. I'll look back, I'm like, who approved this? Who
I laugh
approved
at
it?
my photos all the time.
Oh
And
my
I look
God.
forward to laughing at the photos of when I went pro. Like that's just what
Yeah,
it is.
right. It's so true. That's such a great point. I feel like I looked better at the shows leading into the USA's than I did at USA's, but I
Yeah.
learned so much from that experience. And I think something important for people to consider listening is like a national show is not just an investment of time and the hard work, but it's a huge financial commitment too. So when like I personally like don't regret any of the national shows that I've done because of the experience and making the most of it. But I do now with the experience of having done USA's and then bringing my best to North Americans, but still being six C of 16, you know, I'm kind of like I'm going to be much more careful about how I approach things moving forward because it's a big investment, and I don't think that that's considered enough because everyone just wants to go to nationals, get on a national stage, try to get their pro card, but what would you encourage people to consider before actually competing at a national show?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Like luckily I wasn't financially ruined or anything, but
Yes.
like I'm here now. But I was like in college. I mean, I was in college till like last week. So,
Mhm.
it was a huge financial investment and like staying in Arizona is expensive and like the flights there were so the whole thing. So I would say um so I had won the bikini overall at Battle of Champions that year, like 4 weeks or something before USA's. And what I would encourage people to do is take like a critical look. Like just because I won an overall doesn't mean I had any business being at nationals. And like my placing
Interesting.
reflected that, you know? Um, so yeah, I would just before you do a national show, consider why you want to do it. Like, are you trying to be competitive or do you just want the experience? And if you just want the experience, that's fine. But if you're going to be really broken up about, or if you're saying that, but you know deep down you're going to be really broken up about not doing well, then like if that were my mindset when I went to USA's, I would have been crushed. But
Right.
luckily, I wasn't feeling that way. So yeah, so even if you win an overall, take a critical look at who else you were against, like how competitive was that show. Um, so yeah, that would be my advice. And
So
anticipate spending like at least $1,000 more on a national show than you have
that's
budgeted.
great.
Like doing a national show is already going to be probably about 200, I mean, 200,000, $2,000 by the time everything is done.
That's true, especially if you're gonna fly any of your friends and family out or buy
Yep.
them tickets or anything like that. It adds up really fast. And
Seriously.
I want to go to your point about being in school. So I also competed and have only competed while earning my degrees.
Yeah.
And now I'm entering, and you as well are entering a season of life where, you're going to pursue another degree and go for it. I'm entering a season of life where there isn't another degree for probably a long time, if there's not none on the calendar. And so it's a different approach. And I'm curious for you how you have personally navigated managing school and work while competing at a high level.
Yeah. So it seems like it would be easier to prep if you only had prep to worry about. But I found that like that time between winter semester, I mean, yeah, just winter break, that winter break time. I was busy with grad school applications for like the first week and a half of it. And I think break was like 3 weeks or something. And then the next week and a half, which was leading into the show, like my show happened the Saturday before the semester started. So and that's why I planned it that way, so I wouldn't have to miss school. Um, I was, yeah, it was just having all the extra time on your hands. It's just more time to realize how tired you are, to be like near the kitchen and like have the thoughts of going off, even if you know you're not gonna go off your plan. There's still more temptation. So I found that having that structure of being really busy with school and like assignments and stuff helped me stay on track during prep. And whenever I didn't have anything on my docket, then I would mentally really be struggling.
I can see that completely. I think too, when you're used to pursuing it while being so busy, it's a strange feeling. And I can now speak from like coming out the other side, completing the master's as well. Like, I'm like, huh, I wonder what prep's gonna be like without also getting a degree and running my business. It's like,
Yeah.
this is gonna be strange. And I think sometimes we can compare we compare success to like how we've always known it. Like, oh, I feel less busy, less this, so I'm less successful or I'm less invested. But really, it's like just a new approach. And so for you, like you've been used to going to school and earning your degree, that taking that, like you not having it while being in like peak week or something was strange and different.
Yeah.
So now you were applying for grad programs. So are you confirmed for one? Are you
I did
starting?
not get in, sadly. I needed
Really?
more, yeah, I needed more work experience in the field, they said. They were very vague, but that's what they said. So
That
I'll be,
surprises me.
I know it was a bummer, but I mean, it's okay. Grad school's hard to get into. They accepted, I think, 5 or 6% of the applicants.
Wow.
Um, Yeah, it's like an impacted program at the schools that I applied to.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I'll also be volunteering with a couple organizations leading into the next cycle, which starts in October.
Oh, that's awesome. That'll
Yeah,
make you
so
more
hopefully that'll
prepared
help.
anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will. Like you'll be more equipped and prepared. I You still want to go into marriage and family, right? Okay, so what inspired you to want to pursue marriage and family counseling?
Yeah, so I what has inspired me to pursue that? Yeah, so I always communication mainly. Like in my family growing up, it was hard to communicate around emotions and I wasn't really able to put words to how I was feeling. I would just have to put
Mhm.
like a strong face on it at times, not because anyone was forcing me to, but I mean, families are busy and I just wanted to make sure that the experiences I was having with my family were like as positive as possible. It was just a
Mm.
burden I put on myself because my family rocks. And like when I told them I wasn't going to go to college after high school, they said, I'm so proud of you. Like they're
Aw.
the most supportive people ever. My mom comes to every one of my shows.
Aw.
Um, but yeah, I just always had that in me where I just wanted to make sure that everyone was comfortable. And then I found later on that like I was super avoidant of my emotions, things like
Mm.
that. And then working as a makeup artist for so many years, when you have someone sitting in your chair, they would spill all kinds of things to you. Like from the time I was a kid, adults would say stuff to me like, um, yeah, my husband's been cheating on me for about 8 years and he doesn't know that I know. And just seeing the lack of communication was heartbreaking and like how it affected them. And that obviously persisted when I was doing makeup and working as a personal trainer. Like people just tell you things. So I wanted to go into marriage and family therapy to help people feel empowered with their communication, and young girls and queer people see like a huge drop off in self-esteem once puberty starts. And being a woman and a queer person, I want to be able to get in there and help young people before that kind of stuff starts happening. So, like, to help them cultivate a strong sense of self and self confidence so they feel like more empowered to be themselves.
Did you experience a lack or a drop in your self-confidence?
Luckily, no, because, like I said, with my parents, they just like are, unconditionally positive around like me and they think I'm like God's gift to the world. So
You are to
uh,
them.
yeah, to them I am. But I totally had a lot of friends who struggled with like self-esteem, not feeling like they were good enough, pretty enough, smart, stuff like that. And I always just wanted to like shake them and say, no, 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 see it,
Yeah.
because I saw that in my friends.
Definitely. So, walk me through your time in the psychology program. I mean, obviously, I'm extra curious for personal reasons, but I'm also curious from, a listener perspective. Like, walk me through your time in the psychology program. Did you have the opportunity to explore these specific subject areas and materials, or do you feel like you're kind of chomping at the bit to get into that?
Yeah, so of course we touch on a lot of stuff because it's like a general psychology degree. But I do a lot of like research in my own time, reading like journal articles, listening to various like psychology professors who specialize in different things like attachment styles, personality disorders, and like how those affect attachment style, things like that.
Mhm.
So a lot of that passion has come from my own research. And then in different subjects I've taken, I'll go to office hours and like expand on things that I'm interested in with my professors. Like I had one professor, Dr. Shudson. Um, Maybe you guys know him at Sac State, but he specializes in trans people and like the experience of trans people. So he does a lot of research with that population. And that's obviously something I'm super interested in. So I've been really lucky to have really special professors in my life to learn from.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I felt like having supportive professors throughout my degree programs helped me to feel more empowered to explore the subject areas I was most passionate about.
Yeah.
And when you have someone who you can bounce those ideas off of and they're encouraging you and they're even supporting you and finding more research, or they're encouraging you to better understand the literature you are finding and draw conclusions or come up in the future with treatment plans and how you would apply this knowledge, it's very empowering. And I'm now more curious about your own upbringing. And you said that your parents were very supportive and unconditionally positive for you. And of course, within counseling, our goal is to always have unconditional positive regard for people.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a benefit to you. You already have this natural knack to listen and understand, given the work that you've done has been very people and service oriented. So you'll probably feel very natural in these situations. How does it look from what you know? Because I don't believe there's much research or understanding on specifically applying marriage and family counseling principles to the queer population or even the trans population. How do you foresee that developing, or what have you learned so far that you could see yourself applying there?
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I think the best bet at the moment, like while they still conduct research into like helping queer families and queer individuals and stuff, the best resource would be just finding therapists who already specialize in that and are like part of that community and have a large clientele in the community, and learning from them about what they found works best with the unique people that they work with. So, I mean, until like extensive research is done to like actually have a positive impact and like more well-rounded understanding of those populations, then I think the best bet is just working with people who already work in those populations and have for a long time. And learning from people who have like been in like part of the queer community their whole lives, because they'll have like a way more unique and well-rounded perspective on what it's like to actually be a member of the community and how that's looked through the years.
What have been your own personal understandings of the community based on your unique experiences as well as those around you?
I mean, it's super sexualized in a way that like whenever you meet, a lot of times you'll see people meet queer people, like a gay man, for example, and they'll be like, "Are you a top or a bottom?" Like stuff like that.
Mm.
And you wouldn't say that to someone, a straight person. You wouldn't say like, "Oh, how do you like have sex?" or whatever. That's inappropriate and not no one's business, you know?
Yeah,
So
interesting.
I think just like looking at queer people as like regular people who happen to like something different than you like, or like someone different than you like.
Mm, that's very interesting. Help me understand the background of queer. Like, help me understand what does that identity actually mean to that population?
So it's different for every single person who's a part of it. So like queer is an umbrella term. So queer would include like bi people, pan people, gay people, lesbians, and so on. Um, so it more, what matters is more like how the person saying they're a part of it would describe themselves. So like for me, I guess you would say I'm bi. I identify more with the term queer because to me, the term bi kind of implies a binary. So even though it doesn't, bi can just mean this gender and another or something like that. But I think a lot of times it comes off as like just men or women, but really it's like could be anything in between. So I identify more with the term queer, but it's totally different for everyone.
Yeah, this is not a subject area I found myself heavily diving into necessarily, or the population that I serve specifically in the counseling center was more so adolescents who
Mhm.
were discovering these things about themselves or coming to terms with it or learning how to come to terms with it.
Yeah.
Something that I find fascinating though is you say there's an over-sexualization of this community. What do you think has contributed to the over-sexualization of the community?
Probably just queer people being like in media and stuff, being portrayed as really one dimensional. Like if there's a gay person in a show, that's what they are. They're the gay person. They're not like also a carpenter or also super art, you know, it's like mainly that their storyline is that they're gay. And that's changing now, of course, but when I was growing up, it was seen as that.
Hmm.
only.
That makes sense. So maybe the way that it's been portrayed to people has influenced the way that they perceive it, much like bodybuilding and bodybuilders in the media are generally perceived as like roid raging,
Yeah.
crazy, vain people, when we know and within the community that that can be true, but that's
Yeah,
not, it can be true, but it's not always true.
exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so now I want to dive into this even more if you're okay with it. You identified yourself as queer, but you fall under the umbrella of bisexual as well, although maybe that doesn't resonate as much with you. How did you realize that, or when did you realize that? And then when did you come out to your parents and your friends, the family?
Yeah, so when did I realize I had suspicions all along?
Yeah.
So like I had a huge crush on my mom's work friend, like huge crush. And one time I had to sleep over at her house with my sister, and it was like the greatest night of my life. It was so amazing.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and so yeah. And then, but I also would have crushes on like guys, like my neighbor. Like there was a time I sat, he was mowing the lawn shirtless. And I told my sister, I was like, he's mowing the lawn shirtless. How do I watch him? And I was like 7 years old.
Yeah.
And she's like, here's what you do. So she was like 13. And she grabbed a lawn chair and one of her like 17 magazines and cut 2 eye holes in
No,
it.
she didn't.
So I sat in my lawn chair. There's no fence. Like I'm just, he's like 20 feet away. And I had just gotten back from McDonald's with my mom. So I'm like eating McDonald's with this
Oh
magazine.
my gosh.
So then I was like, so yeah, I had suspicions then. I was like, maybe I'm I was like, maybe I'm not gay. Like this is what I'm thinking as like a 7, 8, 9, 10-year old. And then so sometimes I would get crushes on guys and I would think to myself, huh, maybe I am gay, but I'm just in denial about it because of how society will see me. Like that's what I was
Interesting.
wondering, like as a kid. And then later on, there would be a few guys at school like who had crushes on me, but would like try to bully me by calling me a lesbian and stuff. And I so they would call
Interesting approach.
yeah, they would call me a lesbian. I could say their first and last names, but I won't just in case people find them. But I do love identifying people with first and last name.
You got your burn book over there. You're like, trust
seriously.
me.
So I went to a Catholic grade school. So I guess calling someone a lesbian would be like the worst insult ever. But in preschool, actually, one of them turned around to me and said, I'm going to kill you when I grow up. That's what he said to me. Like a little freak show.
Oh my gosh. I wonder where
But
that
anyway,
person is now. If you got his
yeah,
name memorized, look that up later. Like
his
with the
dad's
word arrest after
a
it. See
yeah,
what's happening.
seriously, with the word arrest. Yeah, so anyway, so yeah, they would call me lesbian, whatever. And then I never took that as an insult because I would think to myself, wow, it's like really sad that they would think that that's insulting. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And I also would think, maybe they're right. Like maybe I am gay and I'm just lying to myself. Like I would just wonder because even though I had like a crush on my mom's friend, I never there was no one like at school that I like had a crush on. And I didn't really tell anyone about those thoughts because I didn't have a crush on any of my friends. But I was afraid that like if I ever even mentioned that maybe I was, then like my friends wouldn't want to come over anymore or something. Like they would think I had. So I kept it to myself, not because I was ashamed, but just like for that reason. Like I didn't want any weirdness, you know?
Yeah.
And then it wasn't till after high school that I met a girl and I was like, oh my God. And I was like so into her. And then went on a date. And then that's when I was like, oh, okay. I guess I am just bi or whatever. And then I'm in a lucky situation where I didn't really ever need to come out. Like, but that's a total privilege to not have to come out. Like, because familial rejection is a huge thing. Like that's very common for like queer people to be rejected from their families and like become homeless even if like their family is rich, you know, because it's just not accepted. So I was lucky that I was just telling my mom a story. And you know when you tell a parent a story but you leave some things out because you don't need them to know everything. So I accidentally outed myself while I told my mom a story. So that's how I came out. And yeah, so that's how I came out. I don't know if my dad knows. He must know. I told him that I went to the queer people graduation instead of the actual graduation. So he must know, but he's never asked about it. Um, so yeah, everyone knows. It's like not a secret, but I have a boyfriend. I would consider myself hetero-romantic, which means romantically interested in men. For me, since I'm a woman, it would be hetero-romantic, so interested in men. And then, so that's what that means. Does that make sense?
It does. So actually, I've never heard the term heteroromantic, but I've spoken with some of my queer friends who have said that they have a desire to be with women and men, but when they think about their future, they see it more so with a man. Is that considered heteroromantic?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's what it is. And yeah, so I haven't like shut myself off to the idea that like I could fall in love with a woman, but it's just not happened yet. So and I don't really plan for it too. I'm like in a very great relationship and I
Yeah.
like plan to be with him. Love him so much. Um so yeah, and then homo romantic would be like the inverse of that. So like romantically long term with someone of the same gender and then maybe sexually interested in people of other genders.
How important is it to have a partner who understands that you have an interest in both or all
Yeah,
genders?
so that's another thing with the sexualization I was talking about. Because like in the past, if I told like a guy I was going out with, then their first instinct is like, oh, does that mean we're gonna have threesomes? Like straight up. Like that's where the
Yeah.
sexualization comes in. So I wouldn't always tell people about it right off the bat because I was avoiding that kind of response. But now if I were to be dating again, I would like be okay with mentioning it up front. Not like sitting them down being like, just so you know. But just like if it came up, then it comes up. I'm not like hiding it because I would want someone to weed themselves out that way. Because if someone reacts like that, they're out. Like date's
Yeah.
over. Um, so yeah, when I told Nsima, and I think Nsima knew before we started dating, but he didn't say that at all. Like he took obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be with him. But he was just super normal about it. I was like, oh, okay, like sounds good. Like no sexualization. Maybe he had thoughts, but he didn't voice them to me.
Yeah. Which, if you guys have, such a strong bond and relationship, it probably would have come out by now had he.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is very fascinating to me. So now, when you look at your life in reverse, you can see that you were able to have really strong, positive relationships and connections and support from your family, yet you still have an allegiance to serve people who maybe face more adversity or difficulties because you had people coming to you about communication issues. You've witnessed this within the communities that you belong to. You've heard stories that you don't appreciate, and you felt it was your responsibility as a child to maintain a positive environment and experience with your family unit, so much so that that sometimes meant not validating or even exploring your own emotions. So, what is the draw in helping people do that? Because, yes, I understand you want to help people communicate better. What is the outcome you believe comes from this?
Happier life. So like I am aware that I was just born into a really lucky situation.
Mm.
But growing up, it was obvious that like not everyone gets to go home to parents that like tell them they love them, like, or parents that hug them, or tell them they're proud of them. And that to me just totally breaks my heart because everybody deserves to grow up and feel like they matter and that they have something to offer. And not just that they have something to offer others, but like they in themselves are important and like have value, even if they feel like maybe they don't have the skills or like the brains, stuff like that. So just what draws me to it is like helping people realize that they are worth something and that just being themselves is like more than enough.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then the outcome I would hope that leads to is them like feeling more positive about themselves, having better self-confidence, maybe going after something they didn't think they were good enough to, like whether it's a promotion or if they competing, stuff like that.
Absolutely. And we see or we hope that the value of people receiving help, like through therapy, through counseling, whether or not they're going through something challenging, have been through something challenging, or they're just doing it proactively or to better their life in some way. Like the goal is for it to improve their quality of life. So I see that for you, it's rooted in helping people to be their most unique and individual self, love that version of themselves, and know that it's enough. And I think we have a tendency to maybe seek other people's validation if we don't have that from ourselves, if we don't recognize or understand our worthiness. Um, your past doesn't seem to necessarily have the biggest influence on your decision other than your experiences recognizing that these were gaps in other people's lives that you didn't face. So I think that that's a really unique perspective that you bring too, because you get to both embody and demonstrate those healthy patterns and develop them even further on your own where they weren't maybe developed in your life, and then help others do that. So now you're going to be entering or have hopes to be entering into a master's program, which is super awesome and exciting. I honestly think if everyone could get a master's in counseling, they should. That's how I see it. But also,
Yeah.
you could just go to therapy instead of spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a
Yeah.
degree. Um, but it is so insightful. I don't regret getting that degree at all. So awesome. Marriage and family is its own specialization for sure. So, do you foresee yourself serving within like a counseling center, working directly with people? How do you foresee your career development there?
I would imagine I would start working somewhere, of course, because having a private practice, I wouldn't have the knowledge right off the bat, obviously. Like, you need to learn from other people. I'm not like under some illusion that like I'm going to be an awesome therapist right away, or even within the first 5 years. Like, it takes time to learn and work with people. So I would like to work with couples. That would be like my ideal. We'll see once I'm in grad school, like if I like that, because I also hear that's like the hardest kind of population to work with, because you're working with like two personalities and two opposing viewpoints a lot of the time. So yeah, that would be my goal.
That's awesome. Yeah, the work that I did within the internship I had was really broad, which I loved. And whenever I worked with couples and families, it was a very different experience than working with individuals. However, extremely fulfilling and rewarding. So, I think it's going to be an awesome journey. I'm excited to see how you evolve through that too. And I hope me and you can keep in touch through that process as well, because I'll be there for you to encourage
Thank
you if you're like,
you.
this freaking case notes driving me crazy. I'll be like, I got you. I
For
got
real.
you. Yeah, that was fun. So let me ask you this now. You entered this sport after going through something traumatic. So can you tell us more about that and just tell us that story and how that decision to compete has actually influenced you now moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. So when I started competing, I was 18 when I first started working out. And I started working out because I was at a friend's house and I never really had sleepovers. Like, I never loved having sleepovers. Like, I just wanted to be in my own bed at night.
Yeah.
So I was notorious for calling my mom at 3 a.m. because she would stay up till 3 a.m. every night anyway, still does. And I'd be like, Mom, can you come pick me up from Liz's house? I want to sleep in my own bed. So then I was in high school, or I just graduated high school. And I slept over at a friend's because I was drinking. And then I went to bed like before everyone else at like 11. And then I woke up at 1:16 and to someone trying to rape me in my sleep. So I was like still a little bit drunk. And so it like took me a second to realize what was going on. And then I started realizing what was going on. I was like, get off me, get up, like yelling or whatever. And then luckily someone else who was like at that same like house party or whatever came like barged into the room and was like, what's going on in here? And then like ripped the sheets off the bed and like exposed this creep who was like completely naked behind me and was like, get off of her, get out, get out, get out, and like yelling at him or whatever. And then the guy, like, so pathetic and gross, starts like covering himself with the sheets, like disgusting. And at that point, I had already had like an eating disorder my whole life, like from the moment I can remember, like from when, I don't know. I feel like I keep saying when I was 7, but yeah, I was probably like 7. And I guess that's when my earliest memories begin.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had always had like some level of eating disorder, like binging, stuff like that, like eating a ton, knowing that it was only me who could have eaten it. Like it was, my sister was 6 years older. She was out of the house like during the whole time I was in high school and like finishing up grade school. So if I ate like half of a package of Chips Ahoy and like scattered them to make it look like they were more full than they were, even though obviously they weren't.
Yeah.
So everyone knew it was me, you know, and nobody was like giving me trouble about it. But so yeah, that's just to illustrate that like I totally had an eating disorder before. And then at that time, when that happened, I was like, I want to feel, I had felt like I had gained a little bit of weight or something. And I probably had. I was eating s'mores for breakfast, like for 2 weeks, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner had like a gigantic s'mores or more. And I was getting a lot of the bake sales at Notre Dame de Sion High School. So I had probably gained some weight, but nothing like crazy by any means. But when that happened, I started to be even more aware of my body. And even though like you'd think it'd be the opposite of what I felt, but what I felt, and I knew it wasn't logical, like I knew it was an irrational like voice in my head telling me like you need to look a certain way in order to be like lovable, appealing, blah blah blah. So for whatever reason, it intensified those feelings instead of like other people face wanting to feel invisible. Like they'll end up eating a lot, so they gain a lot of weight, so they become less desirable to someone, to like a predator or whatever. So yeah, just everyone has different reactions. So yeah, it made me feel like I needed to look a certain way, and I also wanted to feel more physically capable. I was like, I want to start working out because I want to feel, I know it will be a false sense of security because I know I will likely never be stronger than most men, but I want to at least feel capable. So I was like, I'm going to start working out. So I started working out, and my mom's friend, Sean, taught me how to work out. He was like 50 something, like salt and pepper hair, and I was like 18, and we'd go to the Jewish community center, and everyone working there thought he was like my sugar daddy because he's like this 50-year-old with like this young 18-year-old girl like teaching her how to work out. And Sean rocked because his brother, well, first of all, he just rocks, and then his brother is Thomas Lenahan, who's a 212 IFBB pro. So like I was working out for a few months, and Sean was like, you should do a competition, like kept saying that. So I was like, okay, maybe I will. And like, I just graduated high school. All my friends moved. I wasn't going to go to college. I was working at Mac full time and like needed to fill the time that I wasn't working my 35 hours or whatever at Mac. So that's when I started prepping for a competition.
Wow. So, first of all, I think it's awesome that someone actually came to the rescue in that moment.
Henry, he's the best.
We love Henry.
And
Shout
then
out
my
Henry.
ex-boyfriend, Henry. Shout out Henry. Then my ex-boyfriend, Henry. I texted him and I was like, can you get this guy's mom's phone number? I'm going to call her and tell her what happened. So then I called that guy's mom, and poor lady was at the Apple store getting her phone fixed. So I was like cutting out when I was telling her. But yeah, so I did take action in that way. But okay, go on.
Wait, that's actually awesome. What did the mom say anything to you?
She was like understandably devastated and horrified.
Yeah,
And they had like just moved to Kansas City from St. Louis. He was a year younger than me, so he was about to be a senior in high school, and I like had just graduated. So yeah, yeah, she was understandably horrified. And like that guy was like, nobody wanted him to come to that house party. Now that it's all coming back, but nobody wanted him to come to the party. And it was like a small gathering. I said it was a house party, but it was like a small gathering,
like a kickback.
A kickback. Do you ever watch 8 Simple Rules? Because they have a whole episode about a party versus a kickback.
No, but I just thought of that from my own high school experiences. I'm like, I didn't go to parties, but a kickback.
It was a kickback. So yeah, nobody wanted to come, and then he ended up coming, and then classic. No wonder nobody wanted him to come.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
honestly, shout out. Thank you so much because he really propelled me to start working out and taking care of myself. I was never an athlete growing up, so it ended up working out for me.
yeah, that is interesting. Now you're an artistic athlete who is intelligent and has great relationships and so on and so forth.
So like, you
So
stop that.
you're like, look at me now.
Look at me surrounded by my favorite art. I didn't make this.
I was gonna ask you if that was your art.
No, this is her name. You can find her on Instagram at Mama Rain Art.
Aw.
And I have like a
Wow.
million of her paintings. She's the greatest. I'm obsessed with her.
You have a shrine.
No, I do. I do. I tell her she has a gallery in Sacramento.
She does have a
She
gallery in
does.
Sacramento. That's
She's so
so cool.
talented.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, if I'm
Yeah,
gonna plug anything at Mama Rain Art, MOMMARAINART on Instagram.
that's awesome. Love it. Yeah, I was wondering if that was yours because I saw that you are artistically inclined yourself. If you're looking for competition heels, jewelry, and fun competitor extras, then visit shoefairyofficial.com and use code Celeste for a discount at checkout. And also, you were a makeup artist. And are you still doing makeup artistry?
Yeah, I still do makeup. Not as often anymore, but yeah, for sure still do makeup.
Okay, I was wondering about that because I saw your makeup page from before, and then I was like, when was the last post? And then I was like, I need to ask her if she's actually still doing it. And then obviously you support so many competitors through your posing coaching, but it's more than posing coaching. So let's just talk straight about that now, because I want to get into that and how you support people through your coaching business to actually establish what's their best presence and their best package and how do they bring that to the stage. So maybe could you start by sharing some of like the things that you offer within that service and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'll do if someone wants just like a posing video critique, I send those over super detailed. They can be like 10 to like 30 minutes. Like if it warrants that, then I'll spend like as much time as possible. And before I do those, I write a list of notes and then I have that up on like the screen recording. And then we go bullet point by bullet point. And I send that to them afterwards too. So they can like, all right, like what it is we're addressing, why we're addressing that, what it's going to do for them when they address that. And I do the same bullet points like after I have a posing video call. So I'll do like 30 minutes, 45 minutes if people want longer, stuff like that. And some people will do like a 15-minute session after they've kind of already gotten established with their posing. And then like for touch-ups, I guess. So I always like have a list of like the what and why and what it's going to do for them so they can like review that, because it's one thing to have the posing call and be like, okay, I'm getting it. But just like when we're trying to learn a new skill, like if we were to be tested on it, we aren't going to be able to memorize everything, like,
True.
so it really helps me to have notes. So yeah, that's what I do. And then if people want virtual like stage makeup sessions, then I do that too, because stage makeup, it gets expensive. And if you have like enough skill, then we can sharpen those skills for you to be able to do it yourself. And that's really beneficial for people who like plan to compete a lot in one season.
That's awesome. Now, how do you help someone find out what's their best look as far as makeup, hair, suit cuts? How do you actually help someone like determine that?
Yeah, so it's all about their physical structure. So like if their bottoms are like going a little bit too high on the glute to where it's exposing where the like bottom of your back meets your glute, it's exposing that area. That will flatten your glutes and make them look more shallow. So we'll like adjust where the bottoms are sitting, or like maybe scrunch them more, stuff like that. And then when we're talking about like makeup looks, I would just say natural, but like glam. So like really making your natural features pop, but not doing anything so heavy or so like bright, like such a bright lip that it's going to distract from the physique, because you should really just look like very put together, very streamlined. And if you're doing like a bold lip, like a bright pink or something, it could end up being distracting from the physique. So basically, it's making sure that nothing is distracting. Everything is just tying you together and making you look like a complete package. And then with posing, it comes down to like, what level are they trying to get to and what level are they at? Like, are they trying to go for a pro card and maybe they have like a narrow clavicle and a wider waist, but they want to do some type of transition between that front and back pose, like a model pose or something. If you have a narrow clavicle and a wider waist, then you're just going to look linear when you do that model pose. So you don't want to show the judges anything that they can critique you on, because like at a national level, everyone looks incredible. The judges aren't looking at you to be like, wow, look at her shoulders. Oh my goodness, look at her glute. They're
Yeah.
not like looking at you for compliments. They're like, everyone looks good up here. So who's detracting from their own
Mhm.
appearance? So for someone with the narrow clavicle and wider waist, we're going to drop the model pose because it's only going to do them a disservice and not going to give them any like bonus points. So really just making sure we're taking into account every aspect of the physique and showing it as well as we can to meet that criteria.
Okay. So much of this is really important and insightful because it's touching on the key in bikini, which is balance. And I think balance is not just in physique and shape, but also in the overall package. We have heard numerous times from feedback or judging videos and review videos from Tyler himself saying, we don't want something that is a distraction, right? We don't want to be distracted. And so it's important to understand, how do you showcase yourself in a way that's not distracting and also like really showcases your balance. Did you ever get feedback yourself on those types of things, the posing, the suit, the hair, makeup? And if you did, what was that feedback and how did it maybe influence your outlook on this?
Yeah, so like for instance, between the LA show and then the Arnold Amateur this year, there was a seminar that Center Podium put on in Reno, Nevada. And he was flying in Bill Sibilia, who's like a head judge. It's either him or Becky that's the head judge at Arnold, but either way, they're both on the Arnold Amateur panel. So when I heard that Bill was going to be there and Steve DeVore, I was like, I'm driving to this seminar. So I drove like 2 hours, whatever, to go to this seminar and get feedback on my posing. Cause I was like, I know my posing is okay. Like, I mean, and like my posing was obviously good enough to win me an overall, like, posing was solid, but I knew there were just adjustments I needed to make. So like for me, what I found was that I was standing too straight up in my back pose to the point that I was
Mm.
almost like leaning my upper body back. And I already have a wider clavicle base. So when I was leaning back like that, it was almost to make it, and this was like my suspicion, but I wanted them to tell me exactly what I needed to do to make it look right. So it was making my shoulders almost a little bit wider than my glutes, which is fine at a regional level. But if I was like going for a pro card, I needed to make sure every single thing was on point because everything matters. So what he had me do is push my upper body back like further towards the curtain about 2 inches, and then that made my shoulders the same width as my glutes and gave me a lot more balance in the back pose. So like minor things like that. And then
That's a
I noticed myself like after the LA show, I was like exaggerating my movements too much. So when I went to the Arnold, then I made sure that like I was streamlining those movements and not doing like too much with my hips and stuff to the point that like you'll see a fold under the glute as I like shift from one hip to the other. So like slowing down those movements and minimizing them as much as possible to maximize my actual energy and stage presence on show day.
I like how they gave you feedback on what was taken away from your physique,
Yeah.
essentially, versus like, obviously it enhanced your physique too, but they and you were able to identify this is what's taken away. I actually just met Steve the other day. We both
He's so
spoke and
lovely.
he's so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's cool to hear that feedback for you. I like to know that, like just how judges are looking too. I think that gives insight because I'm thinking too from a judge's angle, he's probably watching you like, okay, if she's leaning forward more, it made her look more balanced versus not. And I'm sure there's some people who maybe the opposite could be true. I'm not sure. Maybe that would make them look more balanced, but it sounds like
Yeah.
for you, you were almost leaning kind of like in figure or men's physique, the goal is to like open up the back and get that angle towards the judges so that they see it so open and wide. But because you already had that wider clavicle, there was no need for you to push back further, is what I'm hearing.
Exactly.
How do you identify that? Like, how do you look at somebody or even yourself and say, this is out of alignment or proportion here, and here's what I need to do? How could you encourage someone to do that?
Yeah, so it's harder when you're looking at yourself because like you're so habituated to seeing what you look like that like so in that instance I was like I know I have the template of what a posing routine looks like. But when we're getting down to like trying to get a pro card, it's those little tweaks to that template that are going to set you apart and make you hit the criteria better. So, I would say like being able to make those imaginary bars or if you can like put your like do a little put it in your Instagram story or whatever and then take lines and like draw lines and see are the edges of my shoulder matching up with the edges of my glutes or are they way wider or way more narrow to the point that like my glutes are looking wider and flatter and my upper body is totally out of balance as if you're doing like wellness. And then so that's like for your back pose. And then in your front pose, if you're doing 2 bars and your upper body is leaning so forward that it's throwing those lines off to where your shoulder is like more above like that knee
Mhm.
instead of standing like upright, then you're going to look like uncomfortable and unnatural on stage. And part of bikini is looking like you're just standing there. So if you're standing in a way that's like leaned over or crooked, you're going to look less confident because when you stand tall, you look more confident. And confidence is totally like, even if it's not written down as criteria, poise is written down as the criteria. And you don't look poised if you're in an uncomfortable looking position. Um, so yeah, I would say just having those like imaginary guide bars and being like, am I staying within these 2 lines?
Yeah, especially if we're looking for a particular shape, an S.
Yeah.
If you are over on one line, it's gonna maybe look a little bit less like an a balanced S because an S is very like symmetrical
Yeah.
versus I can't think of another letter and I'm looking at my keyboard like I don't know, maybe a K or something. Like
Yeah, yeah, seriously. And like you'll also see when someone is in their front pose. And I mean, I talk about these imaginary bars, maybe it doesn't make sense when I'm saying it. I have like actual graphics of it on like my 360 posing Instagram, so you that will make more sense probably. And another one that I see people do is when they are in their front pose, they'll like be tucking their pelvis forward, which will totally flatten that upper part of the glute and you won't get that teardrop shape. It'll look like flat and then you'll have a fold at the bottom because you're like
Mm.
really tucking in that pelvis, which is taking away the roundness of your glute, and you automatically lose that bottom part of the S. Like you lose all shape. Or if
Mm.
you're way too arched, your upper body will end up leaning forward and or your abdomen will start sticking out. Even if you have like shredded six-pack abs, your lower abdomen by nature of how you're standing is going to start sticking out and making your waist look less tight and a lot thicker. So it's like all about finding whatever the happy medium is for your exact physique.
I would say that you just really touch on a lot of those like common sticking points for competitors, especially, I mean, whether you're new or even advanced, like these things can happen and it's important to continue to work on it or identify it. I like the idea of the grid lines too. I think that especially for someone who's more visual or data driven, that can make a lot of sense to see it that way. And I think, like you said, we're so accustomed to looking at ourselves we might miss that. But like when you go to a show or you see it from a judge's perspective, you pick up on those things. Like I went to a show recently and I'm like watching everybody pose and like I could see some of those things that on me maybe I think are little. But on stage are not so little. Or like I watch a
Yeah.
video back from a show and I'm like, ooh, why did I like look at my North Americans video and I'm like, great, I'm happy with it. I'm not complaining. But I already can see where this can be better, and working with a coach to make that better is important, and also identifying the things in your physique that need to be brought up. You had mentioned, like even the not too much arching in the front pose. I think that's a really key consideration because that does tend to bring people forward. And if it's all about balance, especially in bikini, or mostly about balance, that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Now, how often are you personally practicing your posing? And now that you're entering the pro league, like, is there anything you're excited about with posing that's different?
Um, so yeah, I'm practicing often, every week, multiple times a week. Um, and am I excited about anything with posing? Not necessarily. So I think maybe a lot of people get excited about like lengthening the routine because they get more times, they're able to walk to the back
Yeah,
and stuff. But the longer you're on stage, the more time they have to judge you. So if you're doing the
right.
same pose like more than once, judges are like, okay, I already saw it. And now that I see it again, you're actually doing this in the pose. And if you can't
Yeah.
hit that pose consistently, exactly how you normally do, then that starts to throw things off. Like you just saw yesterday, men's open bodybuilding, Tyler's recap. He was saying that the top two, some of them started repeating poses, but to the point that they weren't consistent. So they were starting to get knocked down. So
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my routine like short, like basically front, transition, back, transition, sign off. Like just making sure I'm having a very tight routine that I look poised and like prepared for and like confident in doing, but not adding too much extra stuff. And especially like it takes a long time to grow those upper outer glutes and like get the density. And when you're walking to the back, they're looking to see if your glutes are flattening out. So I know already like it's going to take me years to build the adequate amount of density to confidently walk to the back of my own volition, not just like
Yeah,
because I'm
exactly.
required to when we do comparisons. So like there's no way I'm walking to the back unless I absolutely have to.
Right. Like hearing him talk about Ashley's walk to the back, I was like, Ashley, three
Yeah.
time Miss Bikini Olympia, 44 wins. Yeah, that's a good point to think
Yeah.
about. Even like Jen Dory doesn't always do it in hers. And
Yeah.
like she's a good example of like a very simplified routine. I think when you watch a lot of the top pros, you find that they're not adding much more posing as
Yeah.
much as it is like a little detail. Like we see Amy like move her hair like
Yeah.
slower than slower. That's
Yeah.
it. Like it's
Yeah.
not like there's this I'm gonna add in this pose and this pose and this. I mean, we did see a little bit of that, like Laura Lee's posing was a lot different. But I think that's a great point. Keep it simple and they're less likely to identify those flaws. And then you made a great point about how the inconsistencies. Something I learned was your first front pose should be the same as your last front pose or your last front pose as your
Yeah.
first. That was so hard for me to practice. I'm still practicing it, like to turn around from the back and make sure that I am in my front pose the same way that I came on stage, because it's true that discrepancy, your waist could just be a little bit too much to the judges, or your glutes could be just a little bit more flat. And so I like how you pointed at the importance of consistency.
Yeah. And then sometimes like exactly what you're saying, when people are transitioning from the back to the front, then they will overturn their waist a little bit to where more of the waist is exposed, and then they settle back into that front
Yeah.
pose where less of it's exposed. But by that time, they've already seen it. So you've already shattered the illusion. And then another thing is that people, you'll hear a lot of people say, like, well, I paid so much to be here. I worked so hard to be here. Like, I'm going to take my time on stage because this is my time. And it's like, yeah, you did pay a lot to be here. So I totally get that. But if you kind of have to play the game if you want to do well. So are you more
Yep.
concerned about how much money you spent to be there? Or are you more concerned about like making sure it was money well spent by executing your routine in a fashion that will like get you a better placing if that's your outcome. I mean, if that's your desired outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that if, of course, a promoter or someone running the show was like, oh, you can only go out there and do your front pose, I'd be like, now wait a
Yeah.
minute. But if it's like you have the opportunity to do a routine and you're not being rushed to just do one pose, don't be up there doing the most because
Yeah.
they are looking for the flaws. And they'll find them. They're trained. A lot of
They
the
will
judges,
find them.
these regional judges are no joke, like they're gonna see it. And then once you hit a national stage, it's like a lot of those judges have judged the best competitors in the world.
Yeah.
They want to see it.
Yeah. They have seen I'm
Yeah.
totally with you.
So now that you're a pro, what do you hope to achieve as a competitor? What do you want and foresee for your competition career moving forward?
What do I want and foresee? I want to just get to a point where I feel like I could be competitive once I step on the pro stage. But that's what everyone wants. Like at the same time, I'm aware that once you turn pro, that could be the last time you ever win. So to like really appreciate the
Mm.
process because like and being aware that like that might never happen again. So make sure that you really love it and like you're like staying present because there's no guarantees on anything. So my goals as a pro are just to put on like more size to the point that if I step on a pro stage, I just want to feel like I belong. So just not looking like I'm an amateur who showed up to a pro stage is like my main goal now. If and when I achieve that, I will set more ambitious goals, but like that's my goal now. And that was my goal with doing a pro qualifier show at all. Like I went to that seminar with Bill and Steve specifically to ask them if they think I belong. Because if you want to know the answer to your questions, you need to ask the question directly. So like I asked directly, I was like, do I belong on a national stage? I don't want to show up and look like out of place. And then Bill said that whatever national, he was like, you finished that level, like whatever national level show, you will look like you belong. So you should like go for it. So that would be my goal as a pro, to just look like I belong and then see what happens after that.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Now, you had expressed earlier that there was a time you stepped on stage when you shouldn't have. And then you did take time off and you came back and obviously you crushed it. So what happened in that time away before, returning? Even though you did have a very sick, this is the key distinction here. You had a very successful run of shows in your first season. It wasn't like you were just continuing to compete without getting any result. You had good results, but you were able to objectively see that your physique still wasn't to the standard of which it needed to be. I expressed earlier, I learned that the hard way myself. So walk us through the thought process of stepping away, and then what did you do in that time off to then get to the point where your feedback was, yeah, you belong up there.
Yeah. So, like we talked about earlier, competing is a giant financial investment. Like, there's always costs that you didn't anticipate. And just life comes up. Like, I had car stuff come up where you're spending like hundreds or like $1,000 like on stuff that you wouldn't be planning to, and being in college the whole time, you just have to be really intentional with when you prep. And I'm lucky that I'm not someone who craves being lean. Like I don't really care about being lean. I like the competition aspect, but like when I put on weight post show, I'm not like, oh my God, I'm so disgusting. Like I put on, like I want to be shredded. I've only been shredded one time. This was the first time I ever got like lean enough. I was never lean enough at my press shows. So taking time off for me is like not an issue. Like I'm happy to do it. Prep is like great and like wonderful in its own way, but I don't love being in prep. Like I prefer to have energy and like, like I was getting to a point where my energy was so low. Like I have 3 gorgeous, wonderful dogs. And like I got to a point where like even looking at the dogs was not sparking joy. Like so I
You
don't
Marie
like
Kondoed your life completely.
seriously. Seriously. Um So yeah, so like after I stepped off stage at USA's, I was like, well, I'm not going to compete again unless like I actually look like I have a shot. I already know what it looks like to not, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also like when I did that first show in 2020 where I like won the overall in bikini, I joined bikini a week before that. Like I was training
Right.
for wellness for like a year and a half. So I honestly just lucked out genetically in that sense. Like I didn't look like crazy or anything at that show. Obviously you can see pictures. But yeah, so taking time off, yeah, you just want to look different. And I didn't want to be someone who got on stage every year and looked either the same or worse. Cause like if you're competing every year, if you don't already have enough size, usually you'll look the same or worse. And I wanted to make like a big improvement. So yeah, what changed is like in the past 2 years since training with Paul, my coach, I like actually figured out what real intensity in the gym looked like. Like leading up to then, some of my workouts, they would have like 11 movements and a lot of unilateral stuff to the point that like I would feel gassed after two of the movements. So the rest of the workout was just total junk volume. So when I started with Paul, the training programs were like way better for me, like way more doable, allowed enough time for recovery, and I was able to give my all to my workout. So in the past couple of years, the biggest thing that's changed is my training intensity.
Such a great point. Like how many of us are probably doing junk volume. Like I look back on my old training programs, I'm like, what a waste of time and energy that was going
Yeah.
into that versus now it's like I'm actually getting the most out of my workouts. You know, I do find it fascinating that you did both wellness and bikini. This is something I've been wanting to talk to you about specifically on this podcast. So ultimately, you went with bikini. Um, do you ever want to grow into wellness or are you like non-bikini through and through now?
I mean, I can't take that many steroids to be competitive in wellness. So, like, could I
Keeping it
compete
real.
as a pro? Sure, because I'm a pro, but not
Right.
because I would ever belong.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
maybe if I put like 10 years of really intentional training into wellness, then maybe I could show up on a wellness stage. But like, that is what it takes. Like,
Yeah.
um, if you want to do wellness, you either have like great genetics for it and 10, 15 years of intentional training under your belt for it, or like taking a lot of drugs for a few years and like putting on a lot of size, you know? And I don't think there's anything wrong with either. Like it's everyone's decision, like doesn't matter to me. But yeah, so I love the look of wellness, but I think I just don't have the patience for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you did start in wellness. You made a last minute decision to add bikini. Why?
Yeah, so when I first competed, it was 2017. I did bikini. And then after that, I was like, I'm never going to compete again. It ruined my relationship with food, blah, blah, blah. But then I was like, bitch, you
Right.
already had a bad relationship with food. You've had an eating disorder since you were a kid. Like, you know, it wasn't
Sounds
competing that was
familiar.
the issue. But I think I just wanted something to blame at that time for my lack of like
Of course.
self-control. Um, and I saw a really like influential video for me. Marcus Seidel, he's a coach in St. Louis, and he posted a video. I even messaged him and like tried to see if he could find it because I like spent hours looking for it again on his Instagram because it was years ago. But he made a video and it was about, and it like totally was me. He just like read me to filth. He was like, compete is bodybuilding, or the video was called like bodybuilding is not for you. And then I watched the video and it was like, if you're complaining about your cardio, complaining about your food, complaining about like this, that, then bodybuilding is not for you. Bodybuilding is a hobby. I play guitar. I don't complain to my friends and family that I need to go spend 15 minutes practicing guitar. I enjoy guitar, so I do it, you know, and if I don't want
That's
to do it,
great.
I don't do it. So that was honestly really eye opening for me because when I started prepping, it was for all the wrong reasons. Like, I need to look a
Mm.
certain way, blah, 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 like we talked about. Um, so that was helpful for me because like competing but put a bad taste in my family's mouth because I was complaining all the time because I was
Yeah.
just like a nightmare and didn't get it. So after that, I was like, never going to compete again. And then I competed at the same show the next year. Was not even conditioning at all, was binging throughout prep. Same with my first prep.
Hmm.
I was like binging throughout prep and lying to my coach about it. And then, so yeah, 2018, I competed, didn't place, but won best poser. And then I was like, I'm never going to compete again. Like, ruin my relationship with food, blah, blah, blah. And then there was a coach I really wanted to coach me, but she only coached athletes. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do a show. And that's when I started like falling in love with competing again, or for the first time, honestly. So yeah, so we trained for wellness. I said I wanted to do wellness. It was just coming out. And I had like bigger legs. Now I realize like, yeah, who doesn't? Like women just carry fat in their lower body. So even though, yeah, I had bigger legs,
But
they
back
weren't like,
then that was
yeah,
what people were doing for wellness. Like that is what you generally saw on
yeah,
stage. It was more of an anomaly to have strong muscular base. You did see more of the like carrying of extra body fat there.
grew. Yeah. And then when I started to lean out, I was like, where'd they go?
Where's my legs?
Exactly. So a week before the show, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna enter into bikini just to redeem myself, like in my own eyes, because
Yeah.
like I failed myself twice before. I didn't stick to the
Mhm.
plan. I wasn't in love with the sport. I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. I was complaining all the time. Like I want to do it for me to prove to myself like I can follow through with this prep. So my coach suggested I compete in novice and only novice for that. And I was like, no, I'm going to compete in open because I had it in the back of my head because I was like being told you'll probably go pro in wellness this year. So I was like, I may as well compete in open because who knows what'll happen? Like, why would I compete in a class that like I couldn't even get nationally qualified for? Like, on the off
Mhm.
chance that I do well. So then they did call outs, and I didn't know what call outs were. So I like didn't realize I was in first call outs or whatever. And then later I like went up for the overall. So yeah, that was the reason I did it because like I had failed myself twice before and I just wanted to prove myself that like I could do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is super awesome. I have a very similar story to you as far as like feeling like competing ruined me. I'm like, oh, competing, I became jaded. Like it's like makes your relationship with food bad, makes your body image bad. And but then I was like you, I'm like, girl, you've been dealing with this as you were little. Like take some
Yeah.
personal responsibility for once. And then I finally, that's why I'm such a big advocate for that in this sport and specifically taking personal responsibility because it is a choice and there are risks, obviously, but we can proactively prepare and prevent and work against those risks and develop protective factors. And I think that you really showcased and illustrated that well in your own journey and how you were able to do that. I think that it's also really key to consider that you will evolve in this sport as a person and as an athlete, which you have, and you fell in love with the sport as a result of taking responsibility and of dropping the complaining. The way we talk about ourselves, the way we talk about the sport, the way we talk about our decisions, it does influence how other people perceive it. And it's very important that if we want to protect this, then we need to protect it and be mindful of how we speak about it. And I think this is also why it's good to have competitor friends because you can be like, this is a hard day. And it's
Yeah.
okay that it's a hard day. Doesn't mean I hate the sport or that I have distaste for the sport, but it's hard. And I just think that that's something that's important. But I'm glad that you mentioned how by complaining about competing, it was actually constraining your competing journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And like what you said with the complaining, it's like, and having competitor friends, then I always just like remind myself of my friends, like when it's a bad day, I'm like, take a step back. We can do anything for 16 weeks. Like 16 weeks in the
Yes.
grand scheme of things, easy. Like that's a
Yes.
blip in our lifetime, you know? So it's nice when your friends remind you of that when you're having a hard day.
That's so true. And knowing that this is like, you've already been living this lifestyle for so long. What's another day?
Yeah.
And this is just like pushing. I feel like there's certain times in prep where you push a new threshold for yourself. So it feels more difficult, even if it's the same demands of like cardio and food and posing. It's just and exhaustion. Even though it's those same demands, there's like a new threshold that has to be reached in order to develop the resilience for the next one.
Yeah.
And it is a very what's the word I'm looking for? progressive. It's a progressive sport where over time, like, okay, you're building up resilience for each next phase, which is a really cool thing about this. It's like you're slowly adding in more cardio. You're slowly taking away food,
Yeah.
generally speaking. And if not, then at least even those fast pulls are preparing you for what's next. So
Yeah.
I also thought it was really interesting. You said earlier you aren't attached to being lean. Um, I'm wondering why or how, given you had expressed you did have disordered eating in the past too, which is generally influenced by body image dissatisfaction, and like you had said, like not feeling um maybe desirable. So how did you overcome the maybe notion that you needed to look a certain way to be desirable?
Yeah. So like the lean look, I've only looked like that like one time, and that was like this season. Like I only looked like muscular and lean one time. So in the past when I was feeling that way, it was probably more like just having a flatter stomach. Like that's probably what I wanted. Um, but not being attached to that now, probably I think where it comes from is just like understanding that I have more value than how I look and that my self-worth is not directly attached to how I look. Because I, again, like going back to the irrational thoughts, like I knew those were not logical, and my logical mind is telling me like that's not true. But I would let those thoughts overtake me. But now I just like every day, like every time I'm on a walk, like I just appreciate the fact that like I'm able to go on a walk. Like my legs can move, like my lungs aren't compromised to where I can't walk a long distance. Like just being grateful for what your body does for you, because we put our bodies through so much, especially if you've had like an eating disorder. Like your body like has gone through a lot and it never stops. Like it's never stopped on you. It hasn't given out on me. Like so it's being grateful that I even have the ability to do those things, and like being appreciative that like competing in bodybuilding is a total luxury. Like especially doing it like how lucky am I that I am able to like be in college and prep when most people would wish they could even go to college or do a show or like have their health in order. So like yeah, just knowing that. And also I just have a thought in my head that like I'm a babe in my eyes no matter what. So who cares? Like the eating disorder, I I can't let that control me anymore. And I just don't want to give it any more energy than I already have. And that's not really how eating disorders work. Like that's what an eating disorder is. Like it nags at you. But just trying to talk back to it as much as I can and ground myself in reality. And the reality is like anyone anyone who has body image issues, there are a million people who wish they looked like you. And like whether you're a competitor or not, like anyone off the street, there are a million people who would kill like to look like that person. And maybe don't have the opportunity to.
Mm.
So I think that's how. And it's hard to always remember, but just keeping those things in the back of my head.
Absolutely. I like your emphasis on appreciation for what your body has done for you and can do for you. That's personally been very grounding for me in this journey and through those changes that we see. I also realize competing has given me a way to have a body that's like not huge pendulum swings, but that does change and evolve consistently. So I almost feel like bodybuilding is a sport for the people who are okay and want to get comfortable with seeing their body morph, because it's rare that you're going to see any competitor, even the top, always look the same. It's not a
Yeah,
sport for maintenance, it's a sport for growth and development and improving.
I love that. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, it's helped me be more like, this is part of the game, like you're not
Yeah.
supposed to look the same. So that's going to require these ebbs and flows, and each one is beautiful in its own way. And if you respect being lean, you have to respect the process that allowed you to build a body that could get you there, and
Yeah.
respect the body that did get you there. And when I sometimes speak to myself as far as like, I respect my body enough to honor her in all of these stages, that helps me to have like a better, more loving connection to my body.
I'm totally with you.
So I want to hear about this idea that Every time you competed, you always thought this is the last time I'm going to compete. Do you feel that way right now, or are you like eager to get on stage again?
Neither. So I definitely am going to compete again. I'm not considering quitting again, but I'm also not eager to get on stage because I know that like I'm not going to look right, you know?
I see.
Um so yeah. So wait, your question was, what was your question?
Yeah, did you feel that way after your last show? Like,
Oh,
I never want to compete again?
no, no. So like, the biggest hurdle I have in prep is just like crippling self doubt. So
Mm.
like, a lot of it was like, it's impossible for you to ever get lean enough. Like, you'll never look like a pro. Like,
Mm.
why are you're gonna embarrass yourself? Like, those are super common thoughts. Like with
Yeah.
competing, that I've had. So just like there's a lot of self-doubt. And this time it kind of feels like the pressure is relieved because like I never thought I would go pro. Like I hoped, I was like, of course I kept it in my head like the goal is to go pro, but did I think it would actually happen? Not necessarily. Like because the
Yeah.
stars really just have to align. Like the right people have to show up for you to like do well. So like a few people, like 3 to 5 people, like didn't even make it on stage in my height class. Had everyone made it on stage, maybe the outcome would have been different.
Mm.
So just yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it
Does
does.
it?
Yeah, it does. I actually think that's a great perspective too. Like, yes, there's self-doubt, but you know you're going to keep getting better and you're going to do your best to show up and not let the self-doubt get in your way, but you're also being realistic with yourself and saying, this is what I need to do to improve. What was your feedback, by the way, when you won your pro card?
They said to build glutes for at least a year in overall muscle maturity. So I'm going to take 2, 3 years before I step on stage again, probably. I'm allotting like 6 months of that to the prep itself. So like 1.5 to 2 years, to 1.5 to 2.5 years when I would probably start a prep. Because I just want to make sure I'm like putting on enough. Is it ever enough? But like enough size to feel like
Right.
I at least will belong. So yeah, that was my feedback.
And that time flies. Like, I know there's people listening going, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Guys, it goes so fast. I'm like, what is it? I'm like I'm almost at 2 years. I'm like literally at almost 2 years of being away from the stage. And I blinked and it happened. So but it's worth it. Like, you can really build in that time. You can be better and it goes by so fast. And I think maybe this is a less than desirable thing to say, but I do believe on some level, the more time you take away from the stage, the more you realize you don't need the stage too, and you get really comfortable in your improvement season, your lifestyle phase. I think you build a lot of that confidence and that trust in yourself. You develop a deeper intuition about your body that will only benefit you when you go into prep mode because you'll be detached from the outcomes. You'll be detached from, I need to get that state. Instead, it's just like, I've been doing this. I've been away, but I'm still been doing this. We're good.
I'm totally with you. And you are looking so good.
Thank
I've been
you.
seeing your weekly check ins,
Oh, thank you.
and your flow is beautiful.
Thank you. Coming from you. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was gonna
Silly.
hear that. So thank you. That's awesome.
You're silly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's definitely been a good improvement season for me. I feel like my body recomp has been like the craziest and it's been good. So next year's my 10th year of competing, actually. Thank
Congratulations.
you. So we're gonna go for it, see what happens. I'm hopeful and excited. We're gonna start prepping like November and then I
For
think
the
November.
holidays.
Yeah, then hit it early. You hit it early and so I'm
That
gonna
was,
hit it
yeah.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my strategy. I was like, okay, because of the self doubt, I'm like, I want to do a show. Because, like, since there have been more opportunities for people internationally, then fewer people have been coming to the Arnold Amateur.
Mm.
And also, just like with inflation being so crazy.
Yes.
So, like, my whole plan was just based around self doubt, which is like, you'll probably be softer earlier on in the season, softer. Everyone's still hard, but like, girls
Yeah.
team seem to be like awarded. So I was like, I want to do the smaller shows because like I don't think I'm going to be that competitive. So I'm going to plan for like doing the earliest qualifier I can because I needed to qualify, and then doing like Arnold Amateur and Junior USA's, and then we'll see if I even have the energy to like keep going after that if I don't get a pro card. Um, so yeah, and I loved competing earlier on in the year
Oh
because
yeah.
like yeah, it's just travel is easy because people are done traveling after the holidays. And I don't mind prepping during the holidays at all. Like I didn't go home for the holidays this year, which made prep super easy because I'm not like tempted by food or anything. So yeah.
I agree. When I did a show back in like February of 2018, that was like probably some of my best show experiences was the very beginning of the year. And I think too, you could prep through the holidays without it. Like if you start early enough and you give yourself enough time, you could still enjoy a family meal. And I've been in your position too, where it's like, well, we're not even going anywhere, doing anything, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I've also been in the opposite situation, and I'm like, it's very easy to still like be there. And I think if anyone is considering doing a show at the beginning of the year but doubts their ability to, this I would encourage you to try it, and or at least address what you think is holding you back from doing it, like if it is food, relationship, or body image, or concerns with communication around the holidays. Obviously you can come to me for help with that, but I
Yeah.
am also encouraging you, yes, to address it if those things come up, but not to limit your potential anyways.
Yeah. And it's less expensive to do it earlier in the year because like prices for flights and like stays and stuff go up in the summer, which is when a lot of them are like centered around the summer.
Mhm.
Um, and those ones are all like on the East Coast. And since I live in California, then the closest ones are like USA's, which is a 2-day show in July. And when I'm ready to prep, I'm like ready to prep. I'm not like waiting, you know? And then the other option is like Ohio, which makes more sense for me. So yeah.
That's great. So let's get your best advice now. What would you say is your best advice for somebody who has never competed before but would like to? And then your best advice for somebody who's on their road to pro?
Never competed before. Don't get too concerned with like who you see competing and comparing yourself. Like I always was looking people up like this many weeks out or blah blah like the hashtags and stuff. Um but yeah, don't get concerned with that. And I hear a lot of people say like, "Oh, they may show up that day and they won't look anything like they did in their pictures. Like they'll look bad essentially." But like I wouldn't even get into that mindset because then you're still then you're kind of putting someone else down. I would be like, yeah, they might show up and look that good or better, you know, but like that doesn't matter to you because there's nothing you can do about that. And also people like get wrapped up in looking at pros. Um NPC shows, there are so many different kinds of people. Like a lot of them are doing it because they've lost like 100 pounds. A lot of them are doing it because they had a baby a year ago and they like want to get back in shape. Other people are doing it because they want to like they've been an athlete their whole life. Maybe they do like they could step on a pro stage that day. Like there's such a wide range, but it's not going to be as intimidating once you get there as like you're building it up in your head to be. So just like if you can as much as possible, don't compare yourself. I've even like unfollowed every competitor I follow for periods of time because like I was getting in my head. So that's what I would say for new people. And I think also some people are afraid of entering like an open class because they're like, I don't have a shot there. But it's like, why not? You're already spending, if you have the money, because like it's expensive, but you're already spending all the money on doing those other divisions, like getting your hair and makeup done. Like the more times you can get on stage in one day, like if it's your first show, the more comfortable you're going to be once the open class comes because open is last. So you'll already have been on stage like maybe a couple times, true novice, novice by the time you get on like open. So yeah, so just exposing yourself to doing the uncomfortable thing because you've worked so hard to be there. And I would also say appreciating that everyone has worked just as hard as you. So like even if you feel like I worked so hard, I deserve blah blah blah. Being like, well, actually, everyone worked this hard, and everyone deserves to do great, you know. So not being attached to an outcome is my other thing. And then someone who's going for their pro card, I would say you think your posing is good and it's not as good as you think it is. And I'm talking to myself too. Like the Arnold Amateur was super rushed. Like there were girls stepping into their heel as they stepped on the
I
stage.
saw
Like,
that.
yeah, it was super rushed. So I was like getting stressed, and you can see me shaking. Like I'm not proud of my stage videos at all from the Arnold
Mm.
Amateur because it's like so clear how nervous I was. Um, but yeah, like just making sure you practice your posing and not just your front and back pose because you can really nail those, but your transitions. Maybe you're dropping your glutes in your transition. Maybe you're not controlling your waist, and then conditioning as far as holding your pose in the comparisons. So that's something I really slacked on in my prep, and I knew that I was slacking on it. I was just getting so tired by the end of prep that I was like, it is what it is. Like, hopefully there won't be a lot of people. You won't have to hold it for that long. Like, that's where I was at. And I knew that that was going to be my biggest weakness going on stage. So I would say like watching a video of a national show, pretending you're one of the people in the call outs and holding your conditioning. Because it's one thing to be able to do your front and back. It's another thing to have to hold it for a long time on stage. Luckily with my eating disorder, I was used to holding my abdomen tight all the time because I wanted to, I had a flat stomach. But like still, there's room for improvement. So yeah, and just not being attached to an outcome and taking an improvement season. So like if you're consistently getting top 5 but not breaking that pro card, then it might be time to go into an improvement season. Like it feels close, but it might be further than you think.
Mhm.
So just like really making sure you put the time in before prepping.
Yeah, I love all of that advice. Very good. And I think insightful too, considering everything we've already touched on. The fact that you had even more value was so amazing. Can
Thanks.
you yeah, it's awesome. Now, can you let everybody know where they can connect with you, work with you, follow your journey?
Yeah, my Instagram name was like a joke, and then I always told myself if I ever went pro, I would make it even longer and add an underscore IFBB pro. So it's like the longer
This
username
might be the only time you regret it.
no, seriously. So my posing business is just at 360 posing. And then my regular Instagram is at and that's underscore showbiz underscore baby underscore IFBB pro. That's where you can find me.
Perfect. And if you guys didn't capture that from what we just said, it'll be in the show notes. So that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right now, it'll be at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section and you'll be able to find everything there. Not just the links to connect with us, but also a full episode summary, a bulleted list of the topics that we covered, as well as timestamps. So you can go back and listen to your favorite part or tell your friends, your family, your teammates why they should listen to the episode. It goes a long way when you share it. And of course, when you subscribe and when you let other people know about it, it means a lot. And it also means a lot to the athletes as well as myself when you message us or you tag us that you're listening. It's super awesome to have your guys' support. And Sam, thank you so much for coming on.
Wait, can I say one more advice?
Of course.
I'm so sorry. I know we just ended. Okay, here's another piece of advice. Whenever prep gets hard, I always tell myself, like if I'm 6 weeks out and it's a Saturday, then I tell myself, in 6 weeks from right now, you will have already stepped on stage and the show will be over. So
Wow.
appreciate today because it'll already be done. And like a week
Mm.
out from when I did the Arnold, I was struggling mentally and I told myself, took my headphone off and I said to myself on my walk, a week from today, you will already be an IFBB pro. And I didn't believe it,
Wow.
but I would just tell myself because it was getting so hard that I wanted to quit. So just like
Wow.
if you don't have to lie to yourself, but just remember that. So, okay, that's all.
That was a great extra. And like that means only the people who listened all the way through will get that nugget.
Perfect.
It's beautiful. It's like the secret golden nugget of the episode. Tag
Yes.
us if you heard the secret golden nugget. I love that. So, all that being said, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.